Hi, kids. The beers are open. The lawyer is in the house. Be prepared for strong interpretation language and nothing to be officially said, but a lot of things to be talked about. Our good friend Jamie's in. He's going to sit in. Specifically, I have some Fourth Amendment stuff I want to talk to him about. If you recall, he's the number one Trump hater that I know, and I'm sure we'll go back into that topic at some point as well. But the main thing is you guys have heard me drone on about this drone situation. Oh, that was bad. I'm sorry. Anyway, Sheriff's Office is buying a drone. Senator Massey has introduced a bill to change what the local law enforcement is allowed to do with drones. And I'm curious where it sits with the Fourth Amendment among other items. So that is the main topic for me. But as you know, we never stay on topic. So that's our starting point, and we'll get going from there. Cheers, good sir.
Cheers to you, sir.
How do you do on this lovely early February
I am much
evening?
better than I deserve, I assure you.
Well, that is the best answer possible, I suppose. As said in the intro, this drone situation really, it bothers me more that nobody's talking about it, and everybody I bring it up to doesn't know of anything about it. And I'm trying to figure out how to address this topic without becoming a target for the sheriff's office.
Good luck.
You know, and so I did. I emailed the sheriff's office, and I've reached out to them for some more information from their side of it. I do have Massey coming in early March, but that's a month away almost. So we've got a little bit of time before I get to ask her specifically about it. There's another one that Massey's working on right now that's really weird. It's a voter thing, but I'm not. I was reading up on that stuff. But as everybody knows, I stay super local. And so this is what bothers me. This is one of the things I get lost in the system on it specifically. It's like the sheriff's office buys a drone. The only reason it even came through commission was because of the price tag. It had nothing to do with permission to use, how they're allowed to use it. That was none of why it was in commission. It was only commission because it was over 10 grand and it was under value because it was a surplus item that the Department of Defense was dropping off. So essentially, one of those two reasons is the only reason it came to commission, because commission is just a budgetary backstop for items.
So homie got a discount.
So what?
Homie got a discount, right?
Right.
Pretty much how that went down.
Well, from what I gather, I'm not sure which of the two it falls under, because the sheriff's office has a max amount on single expenditure they're allowed to use without commission consent. It might have been that one because it was 17-something thousand that they spent on it. And it might be 10 grand, over 10 grand they have to ask permission. But the other side of it too, you cannot gift, the county or any county body cannot receive a gift or a donation or whatever from anybody without commission approval. And since it's a $40,000 drone and they're only paying 17 for it, that discount counts as a gift to the county. And one of those two things applied. But again, the problem is I'm talking to commissioners about it, and all they care about just with the structure is not what's being done with it. It's that, are we going to allow them to buy this? And in that conversation, as far as I can tell, nobody's asking, why do you want it? $2,000 permission to sell it or to let them buy it. And so that's where I'm real fucked up in this whole thing. And so I figured I'd start with the Fourth Amendment, because that's where it should fall under some of the stuff on what they're allowed to do with it. So that's why I brought you in. And so I have it up here in front of me. You can read it. I can read it. You go ahead and read it. I'm going to look up the Massey bill while you're reading it.
Sure, no problem. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution reads as follows. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by an oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. A very broad amendment to the United States Constitution that has been whittled down to the point where many of us think that it barely exists.
That last section was commentary in case you were reading along.
Oh, correct. That's right. Yeah, that's, it's hard to read it without having commentary. So I apologize to those with sensitive sensibilities.
All right. So Massey is introduced in the state. SB 0258 is introduced. It authorizes law enforcement agencies to use a drone to provide an enhanced security for a public event, to provide aerial coverage during a natural disaster, or to investigate the scene of a crime. Extends the time within which law enforcement must determine whether evidence collected by the drone may be retained or deleted from 3 days to 30 days. So I don't know what the current law in the book is on how state agencies, because, okay, here's a question. I don't know if you know the answer to this. I believe I understand the answer. But the sheriff's office has its power and authority granted by the state, not by the county.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct, because the counties, and then of course the sheriff's department in the county, they're a political subdivision of the state with all of the immunities that attach thereto. That's correct.
Okay, so and this is another one where I get confused, and this is one of the things I want to ask the sheriff's office is, so because we've had issue with some of the Board of Health stuff and whether Sheriff Spangler was willing to have his deputies go out and enforce some of the health department things, which I think is an interesting little subsection of conversation, which is not my intent for now, at least on what to get into. But I find that part interesting in that the Board of Health is a state body too, so he shouldn't have the authority to pass that. But more to the point, I'm confused on where the commission comes in on the legal use of law enforcement, because the city manages the police department, but the county doesn't manage the sheriff's office. The state does, other than budgetarily through the commission's annual budget stuff, as I understand it. So I guess, go ahead.
Well, and I'm not an expert at all in, county governmental agencies and the sheriff's department in each of the counties. But what I can tell you is that regardless of the state or the counties, overall, they all are governed by the Fourth Amendment and then the jurisprudence of the Supreme Court of the United States as to the Fourth Amendment. So it doesn't matter whether it's Knox County or the Knoxville Police Department, etc. They all are under the umbrella of that jurisprudence.
Okay, so following that, in this Massey law is changing what's currently allowed. How much do you know about what's currently allowed with drone usage by law enforcement?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any sort of any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a case currently pending involving some individuals up in the Tri-Cities area, and they were subjected to surveillance. It was not by a drone, but it was by aerial surveillance. And what I can tell you in that case is we're still waiting on a ruling for certain parts of it, but depending on what the nature of the warrant, for example, in this case for search and then ultimately seizure of the property, is that you can't have an unreasonably you cannot fly an aircraft at an unreasonably low altitude when you're engaging in the surveillance, unless, of course, there is already probable cause to believe that there is illegal activity on the premises. So, for example, in this case, the aircraft was flying and it was a helicopter, just, to be clear, the helicopter was flying at approximately 45 to 50 feet above the property, and the jurisprudence that we researched, and this case has been going on a while, the jurisprudence we researched back in the spring of 2018, right before we filed the case, indicated that was based on the general nature of the warrant for the search of the property for allegedly stolen vehicles, is that was not in congruence with Fourth Amendment jurisprudence. You can't fly that low unless you have specific information and a specific directive in that warrant that there is probable cause to believe that there is something down there on that property in which you can justify using the aircraft. Otherwise, you have to be at a normal flight pattern, is what we were looking at.
See, but that's where the drone specifically concerns me, because the deal with the drone, I mean, I don't know the depths of, I guess, for full transparency on my understanding of what's going on, I don't know what kind of drone we're even talking about. I'm assuming, I'm ballparking from the numbers, and because it came from the Department of Defense, I'm betting that it is an airplane drone. It is not a like a quadcopter like you and I can buy, because you and I can pick one up that's pretty damn good for less than 17 grand, brand ass new, not full of sand from Afghanistan or whatever,
and lots of fun.
Right, but I'm guessing that this is a plane drone that's going to be at thousands of feet, but is going to have the equipment that it might as well be 6 feet over my house.
And that's also an interesting consideration, because really, and again, we're talking about, with the example I mentioned to you, we're talking about just a standard helicopter. We're not talking about something that has, a significant, telephoto lens that's looking a long way past what, just the normal naked eye would. So, and I don't know, again, what the jurisprudence is out there on that issue, but certainly I would believe that based off of, the precedent that's out there, it doesn't matter how low the aircraft is flying. What matters is how much can the aircraft see. For example, and you may know this, back several years ago, one of my favorite justices of the Supreme Court of all time, Justice Scalia, wrote an opinion, and I can't recall the name of the case, so sorry, legal eagles, but there was the usage of an infrared camera. Yeah, you're nodding your head. So there's an infrared camera that was used by law enforcement that ultimately detected the fact that this particular homeowner was growing marijuana inside, and the only reason law enforcement was able to determine that was because of the heat lamps it picked up. And the warrant was not specifically detailed enough to have probable cause, where law enforcement, absent that, very unique circumstance, that using that, unique special technology, would be able to recognize that. So ultimately, the Supreme Court, Justice Scalia, writing for the majority, said, no, you can't do that. That is beyond the scope of the Fourth Amendment, to simply be able to use a device such as an infrared scanner to stand on the corner of the road or the street, whatnot, and just scan the house. That does not pass Fourth Amendment muster. So I think,
right,
the analysis as to, whatever the drone may be, again, whether it's a helicopter or it's an actual unmanned drone, I would think that the same sort of analysis is going to apply.
Because that's my concern in it, is that it's going to be a higher altitude. You and I don't even know what's up there. It's just flying around over our heads all day, taking pictures. And I guess I need you to help me be able to answer the question when it comes down, because when it comes to Fourth Amendment stuff, other than saying Fourth Amendment, and because it's none of your business, that's the only good defense I have when people are like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what's the big deal? It's none of their fucking business. That's my standard answer. And I need a better answer to that, because that doesn't ever satisfy their need to be like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what's the matter?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree at all with that, because if you look at the Bill of Rights, and there's a reason why it's called the Bill of Rights, is that privacy is, at least before you take all the exceptions into account that have just been, have exploded through the years through Supreme Court and other jurisprudence, is you're supposed to be left the fuck alone for the most part, unless there is probable cause to believe that you have done something illegal. So,
and it's very specific with what they get to look for and at with that, because they can't just be, generally speaking, and again, you use all the legal terms, but the habit has been set where they ask for a warrant and they're not super specific, and they go root through everything until they find something, versus you are specifically supposed to be searching for documentation showing this activity, not anything you can find in the house. Because it's one of the same issues I have with the roadside searches. Anytime you get pulled over, can I look through your car? You're allowed to say no, but it's in that position where you don't want to say no, because then it's almost an admission of guilt, even though you might not be guilty. You want to say no, it's none of your business.
Always say no.
I agree, but even that they're in there, they're looking around. I mean, last time I got a ticket, it was like every time he walked up, it was shining light through the back seat and then on the passenger floorboard and all that stuff the whole time. And it's like, dude, what did you stop me for? Speeding. Well, what does that have to do with what's on my floorboard over there?
Let me ask you this: did you buy your car brand new?
Yes.
Okay. Has anyone ever driven your car other than you?
Yes.
Okay. So if someone who has ever driven your car or even had access to your car, let's say, for example, used cocaine and, accidentally left a baggie up underneath the driver's seat. Okay, so hypothetically, you say, okay, well, I don't want to, act like I'm guilty. I don't want to be that guy. And you allow the cops to search your car and they come across this baggie of cocaine. Well, is that your baggie? No, but
doesn't matter. It's in your car.
Correct. So, you're busted. So again, no way, no how, man.
Right. But again, the only excuse answer you give is it's none of your business. Which to the cop, that's one thing. That's fine. If you could politely say, no, sir, it's none of your business what's in this vehicle, and go about your day. But when in this conversation, because that's always the example. Every time I have this conversation, it's your boy drops his joint in the passenger seat,
yep.
And you drop him off at the house, and you're cruising down the road, and they pull you over, and they dig around, and that joint's over there. And, can't even be like, hey, why would I put it over there? I can't even reach it. What's the point? Yeah, it's not even an argument worth having. It's too late. You're dead in the water conversationally.
Yeah.
And so again, that's the question. Like, other than it's none of your fucking business, what is a better return argument?
The better return argument is that under our system's jurisprudence, you're innocent until proven guilty. So
that's not true. When did that come about?
I don't know. I mean, I've watched Dave Chappelle, so maybe that's not really true. But at least in theory,
it's right. It's supposed to.
That's the standard. So there's no reason why you don't have to defend yourself because you're presumed to not be guilty of anything unless, beyond a reasonable doubt, a prosecutor proves to a jury of your peers.
Right, because that's another huge. Yeah, because that to me is another huge problem with what's going on right now. Because I argue as a libertarian a lot. We are strong advocates against the cash bail system because why am I sitting in jail if I haven't done anything officially wrong yet? You haven't proven I've done it wrong. Why do I have to pay to get out?
And why is your face plastered all over the internet with, saying this person's been arrested and look at you? And I know those are private organizations, so it's not a governmental entity, but to your point is, it seems like the where we find ourselves as a society at this point is that it doesn't matter if you have been convicted of a crime or not. As soon as you're charged, you're picked up, whatever the case may be. If you've been accused of something, automatically, in the court of public opinion, whether it's your employer, your spouse, your friends, whoever, you're guilty. Right. Which is ridiculous.
It is. And again, like the cash bail part of it, it's like, I don't know if this stat was right. I don't know if it was a county or a state stat. It was Josh Eagle. He is still technically, but he's stepping down, the state chair of the Libertarian Party. I want to say he said it was over 50% of, I want to say it was Knox County, the Knox County Detention Center, over 50% as people awaiting trial.
That does not surprise me. I don't know that those statistics to be true, but it would not surprise me.
And that's just gross. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I get it. I understand that there are people that are going to run and whatever. And it's like, again, that's one of those things I don't understand. Like, love my dad to death. He's got his opinions and he's welcome to them. But that guy that got shot in Atlanta, actually, this wasn't my dad. This is a buddy of mine's dad. Now that I'm thinking about it, not that I'm trying to protect my dad here, but it's a fact. Well, then why did he run? It's like, who cares? Why did they shoot him? Because he ran. That's not an excuse to shoot somebody. That doesn't make sense. Not. It's just like that line of logic that goes on to the number of the different things we've been talking about is what drives me crazy. Like, it's just, you only run if you're guilty. No, you run if you're scared to death that the guy's going to kill you. And then he ends up doing so you're proven right.
Well, and that's the ultimate seizure, is being shot to death. Or, however you're killed is, game over. You've been seized permanently.
Right. And okay, so going back to the drone thing where we're trying to stick around, and again, I don't expect you to know all the answers to this. I don't expect that you've done a deep dive into the specifics of this one, but it's one of those things that I've asked this question before in non-law enforcement drones when Amazon first started talking about doing drone deliveries, and I was like, well, how much airspace is mine? Do you know if there's a standard set of I own my house, I own my property. How much of that airspace is actually mine, and I have the right to do with as I please? For example, knock something out of the air that's too close to my home.
In general, all of the airspace is yours. I mean,
Right.
if you own the property, at least in theory, I mean, if you draw a line, around your property and put it, vertical to infinitum, that's yours. I mean, certainly there are.
So for the football fans out there, the plane in the end zone continues.
Correct.
Right,
yeah,
continues indefinitely.
as long as you break that plane, then you're in your own end zone. Now there are some exceptions to that, zoning and that sort of thing. It doesn't mean that you can just build the Burj Al Khalifa Tower,
Right.
400 stories or whatnot. I'm exaggerating, but it doesn't mean you can just do that. But at least in theory, whether it's a pigeon or a drone or a Chinese MiG, whatever the fuck it may be, then you can blow it out of the air as long as it's in your airspace, using air quotes.
Right, I'd have to use some real physics that I'm not capable of to figure out, but I'm pretty sure like Delta and FedEx owe me a ton of rent for the times they use my
absolutely.
airspace without my permission.
Do you want me to represent you? We can sue them.
I mean, it'd be an interesting case. Has it been done? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge, but it'd be fun to try.
Because again, realistically, all right, let's do it. We're on. This is like a standard lawsuit thing where you only get paid if we win, right?
Well, let's see. We'll have to talk about that. Now I will go back to what is it, Coming to America, where the gentleman says, "Hey Stu, yo rent Stu, motherfucker." So I mean, I would really look at the airlines as they're Stu, man, they're Stu.
I mean, it's again. It's an interesting premise to me because it's one of those. It's one of many things that are just kind of accepted as is, and it's like I don't know that the FAA has done. Is there any set of paperwork and legalities and such in place that I mean, obviously they have lanes and stuff and patterns that they're supposed to use, but if any of that has gone through any sort of process with the locality saying we can or can't use this space, other than you can't fly over the White House. Shit like that.
Obviously can't do that. But
why? But again, why is it obvious? It's just it is an American's house. One American lives there.
That is governmental property, so that's a little different. But to your point, I've done a little bit of airline litigation, not a lot, so I wouldn't consider myself an expert by anyone's stretch of the imagination. But the FAA regulations, of course, are based on statutes passed by Congress, and the reason they constitutionally exist is because you're dealing with interstate commerce, and of course the government can regulate interstate commerce. Now, in theory, and I've never delved into this, would be an interesting question that I don't know the answer to, is if there is an intrastate flight, let's say from Knoxville to Nashville or whatnot, what authority does the FAA have to regulate that flight? Because it, at least in theory, does not engage in interstate commerce. But of course, the Supreme Court,
everything is interstate commerce.
Right, has whittled that down to the point of just absurdity. But my point being is that the individual property rights of citizens, I don't know to what extent the FAA, and then of course the statute that underlies the FAA regulations, can just preempt individual property rights because interstate commerce, and we Congress have the right to regulate said interstate commerce. So I don't know. Right,
because then now that I'm thinking about it, the Air National Guard owes me money too.
Oh yeah,
they fly over here all the time.
Yeah, Air National Guard, UPS, FedEx, Delta, they all owe us money, dude. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we need to put a sign, up about, let's say 30,000 feet that says no trespassing, and then put up a little toll right there that you got to fling the coins out of the cockpit as you go by. I mean, that's fair.
I'll reach out to Kyle Ward, who's my county commissioner, and see if I can get the zoning set up to build a 30,000 foot tower. So yeah. Anyway, but again, the issue to me on the drone part of it. Hold on, we got a beer break here. That was the last one of those.
That's important. I'll take the popper topper if you have one.
This is Stella as well.
Yeah, that works.
All right.
I'm a Stella individual.
Man, the jokes tonight. There's a bottle opener on that table over there.
Okay.
I don't think it's a twist off.
Yeah,
it's
well.
classy import beers.
Oh my gosh, I did not expect such class when I came here, but thank you so much. So, please hold for a 30-second break.
I'll just talk to myself. I'm capable.
I know, I've heard.
But so we were, I don't know, because it's one of those, like the drone thing specifically, because again, you'd mentioned it. It's intra theoretically. I mean, that drone likely won't leave county airspace for that matter. But if it's my airspace, it's my airspace. So what's it matter either way? But I don't know. And I'm curious to know if there's a resource that I could look deeper into this, because all I have right now is county bought a drone, and then this Massey law, this 0258 that Massey's introduced, changing the way they're allowed to use it. The problem with it to me, especially in the Massey change to it, or to investigate the scene of a crime.
Okay.
That is painfully vague.
Right. So, again, that, and you said this proposed legislation has not gone through?
Correct. But again, as I understand it,
okay,
most of this is already in place. The big change is the change from 3 to 30 days that they can hold footage before they have to have something that footage goes with. The best, like, I actually read through the actual bill and I don't understand that kind of shit. But the way it reads to be is that the sheriff's office can review that footage currently for 3 days. And if that gets assigned to a specific thing, it can be held as evidence for that specific thing. But they can hold it for 3 days and just hold it.
Well, I mean, that may be true, assuming it goes through. And that may be true that that's a policy and maybe that's the law, but that does not override the Fourth Amendment considerations because, again, I don't practice criminal law. I do some civil rights, plaintiff's work where, suing the government for abusing civil rights, but I don't do criminal defense. But that said, is if you government, for example, are using footage obtained by a drone and under whatever circumstance it may be, and let's say you're keeping it per law, policy, whatever for a certain period, that does not per se mean that if there's a motion to suppress evidence filed by the criminal defense attorney, that's going to be denied because it's going to have to pass Fourth Amendment muster. So if the drone was just flying around just taking photographs of whoever, hoping to find some sort of illegal activity without some sort of warrant that specifies the criminal activity that there is probable cause to believe is occurring, then my belief would be, and my hope would be, that, whether the state or federal court would suppress that evidence because you don't have the Fourth Amendment right to just, use the government just willy-nilly going around and, hoping to find someone committing a crime and then, photograph it or capture video evidence of it.
Right, because that's the thing. It's like if I'm jaywalking and the drone catches me.
You would never do that.
I'm not saying I am going to do that. If. Hypotheticals. I know how to talk to you. Hypothetically, I'm jaywalking and the drone catches it, and some sheriff's deputy who's tasked with the poor duty of watching video all day sees that footage and says, "Here's one," and then I get a ticket in the mail for jaywalking.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be if that's just a general, we're looking out for it, then that's probably subject to suppression. But again, I don't pretend to be an expert, and in the day and age we live in, there is, video, whatever, recording on almost every street corner. I mean, we're not London, but we're doing our damn fucking best. Is, we're looking at everything all the damn time. So where that comes down specifically as to what evidence can be suppressed and what can be utilized to prosecute someone criminally for, allegedly engaging in criminal activity when there's no warrant and the individual just happened to be caught on camera. I don't know exactly where that line is, but certainly there is an argument to be made that if the government is not just looking out for public safety. Let's say we've got a camera on the corner of an intersection where the public crosses on a regular basis, and the purpose of the camera is to identify someone who may have run across and hit someone, whatnot. Versus, we're just going out there and conducting a general search of anyone to see if someone committed criminal activity. I think it's going to kind of depend on the circumstances as to whether that evidence would be suppressed.
Right. Because again, in thinking in stepping back a second, I did a poor example because jaywalking involves a public space. The big issue to me is that, again, assuming this drone has the altitude and camera capabilities, it's going to see into my backyard.
Correct.
Clearly and easily. And that's probably the better example. I'm trying to think of something not completely obnoxiously ridiculous that I might do. This is a bad example, but I don't pull my burn permit and I burn in the backyard.
You too.
Which I already have enough issues with. The rural metro has scared me out of burning in my yard.
Oh, you too. Okay, we'll have to talk about that sometime off camera.
Everybody, the audience has heard the story at least once, if not twice, because I brought it up to a couple commissioners because it's bullshit.
Well, can you share with me, because I have my own story, so I'm very curious.
Okay. Well, we may have another lawsuit to put together, me and you.
That could be fun.
Okay. So, a couple years ago, we first bought the house. One of the reasons I bought the house in the county is because I wanted to be able to burn shit.
Same.
Didn't understand the depths of the rules and stuff, because you can burn in the city as long as you have it in a fully enclosed fire ring and that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. But I go through my due diligence, and if you are a county resident and you've ever applied for a burn permit, it's literally a 5-second form on the county website, and they email you your burn permit, which literally just says you have to call us in the morning, which you call them in the morning, and there's a recording that says whether you can or cannot burn today. For example, I had a bunch of shit I wanted to burn while Pigeon Forge was on fire, and when I called for my burn permit, they said no burning today because we were in the middle of a pretty dry spell and we weren't allowed to burn anywhere. So I was like, okay, I can respect that. I won't burn today. Anyway, we get through that. It gets to like December or January. I believe it was that year, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So Pigeon Forge just burned down or whatever, and we're out of the burn. We're out of that phase of climate shit, and I've got this big pile of stuff that I collected through the fall. And I was wanting to burn, and so I call, get my burn permit updated, do my morning phone call thing, and I was actually, I started burning, then I went and ran into Marin's. The wife and the kids were here, keeping an eye on it like you're supposed to do. And I come back, and the sirens are going off, and it's like, what's going on? Because we have a rural metro station just around the corner. Yeah. Let me back up. First time I ever burned here at the house, which was probably a year before this, a city truck shows up, because across that fence there is city. All of that road is city. Most of that road over there is city. I'm right on the cusp. And so city truck shows up, dude jumps out of the car. I was like, can I help you? He's like, you can't burn. I was like, sorry, sir. Yes, I can. This is a county residence. He's like, you sure? Yes, sir. I'm sure that I bought a house in the county with my money.
Shouldn't you know this?
And so he tromps around. He just walks right in the yard. No request, no nothing. Just walks right into the backyard where I'm burning. While he's walking, gets his phone out, calls somebody, and turns right around and be like, "You're right, it's county. Have a great day." Thank you, sir. He wasn't a complete dick about it, but he was kind of rude in the sense that I don't know where I live. Thank you, sir. So anyway, that happens and goes about his business. So we're a year later now. It's post Gatlinburg's mess, and I'm burning. And I was gone. I was at work. I think actually, the wife was here. The kids were here. They were all tending it, doing some yard work and stuff like that. And they were burning the stuff. And I come home from work, and right after I get home, a rural metro truck pulls up to the front of the house, comes around back, and it's like, hey, hi, how you doing? It's like, everything going okay? It's like, yeah, we got our burn permit and stuff. Cool. It's like, okay, just make sure you keep, again, like lawyers, they have their terms and words they like to use, and so he says a line referring to a hose. So we had a green hose out there, but he's like, hey, make sure that green line's closer to the fire just in case you need it. Thanks, buddy. Have a great day. So I don't think anything of it. Go about it, whatever. Finish burning what we want to do. And then I get a bill in the mail from Rural Metro.
Sure did.
For $1,500.
Yep. Yep.
And I called the number on the bill. I'm saying, I'm sorry, what is this bill for? It's like, our truck came out. It's like, and? Well, it's $1,500 per hour per truck. It's like, okay, I didn't request your truck to be here. And this poor kid that answered the phone, it's like his job's just to take just be assuming that everybody's just be like, here's my money, I'm sorry,
Poor bastard.
whatever.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, that's not going to fly. And so Hugh Nystrom, who was my commissioner at the time,
Okay.
I think I called you first, actually.
Did you?
I'm pretty sure.
You may have.
Because I was pissed. I was like, I'm going to sue somebody. I was just fucking like, this is fucking bullshit.
Well, we've been through a lot of shit. And
It's true.
For years, so yeah, I would not doubt it, but I don't recall specifically.
I might have left you a voicemail because it was late. And so anyway, I get I'm calling anybody and everybody I can call trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do about this, because at the time, $1,500. I mean, it's not nothing today either, but at the time it was a lot more money to me. Mm-hmm. Because I was coming out of the previous lawsuit, the first time I hired you lawsuit, and I was trying to catch my life up after a bankruptcy and all the other stuff going on.
Right.
And so, I get on the phone with you, Nystrom. He's like, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. You got your burn permit? He's like, yeah. He's like, and you had permission to burn that day? He's like, yeah. He's like, so you're a county resident. You have the right to burn. Huh? And they're billing you for it. And it's like, yeah. He's like, that doesn't make sense. And so he calls somebody, and then Rural Metro, he calls me back. He's like, hey, I got the lady that's from collections at Rural Metro. She's like the VP of finance for them or whatever. She said she'd take care of it, but she wants to talk to you first. It's like, okay. So she calls, and I spend about an hour on the phone. And I was like, so what is our procedure moving forward? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, I own a house in the county. I'm going to burn again. What is my procedure moving forward so that we don't go through this again? Because what you're telling me is that this was a gift on your end of not pursuing this. Because again, I just came out of bankruptcy because they couldn't take anything anyway. Okay. But they're like, she's like, we have every right to collect that $1,500 from you, and we're going to let it slide this time. You should get your membership. That's what you should do, and then we don't have to worry about this next time. I was like, I'm not paying you. I don't have to pay you anything. What do you want me to do so that we don't have to go through this whole thing again? Can I call the firehouse after I call the county and make sure I can burn, and call the firehouse and be like, hey,
leave me the fuck alone.
What I'm burning today, just so you guys know, if you get a call in this area, I understand you have to come by, but if you come by and you see that it's coming out of my backyard, just drive on by. And she's like, no, because we have to take the call. And this is another one of the issues with it, is they are contracted by the county. They have to take the call. They have to go out, and inside their policy, if they go out, they have to bill. If you're not a member, that's their policy. And so that's my story of it. And so I've only burned a couple times since, and almost every time it's been in my fire ring, which doesn't matter. If they show up with my fire ring, they're going to bill me for it too. But it just keeps it.
So did you ever pay it?
Huh? No. Yeah. She forgave it in that phone call. She's like, we're going to take care of it. We're going to take care of it. You should get a membership. But if you burn again and we have to come out, we're not forgiving this bill again.
Fuck that. So, well, here is my story. Is I also live in the county, even countier than your residence. I live near Farragut, but I live in the I don't give a shit because I don't actually live in Farragut part.
Okay, so you're not in the township. I was going to ask.
No, fuck no. And I fucking hate Farragut. But anyway, so I live in the not Farragut part of the Farragut County portion. And I've got about a third of an acre, and it is wooded, and I've got a lot of shit that needs to be burned all the time. And I burn shit all the time. So back in November of 2019, it was right after Thanksgiving, maybe like Black Friday. I don't ever fucking go out and interact with other humans, so I'm sure it probably was Black Friday. So my 3-year-old and I were out in the backyard, and we had taken all the fall leaves and all that, and we'd piled them up and we torched them, just like we've torched so many things through time. And
proper father-child bonding moment. Yes,
correct, exactly. He knows proper fire safety, and that involves making sure that you have a line or a hose somewhere close by, so that if there's a problem, you take care of it. It's to your libertarian sensibilities is, I got this, leave me the fuck alone.
Right.
So this asshole who lives a couple of houses down from us, which is hilarious because he has this $350,000 house surrounded by $150,000 houses, but I guess his shit doesn't stink. But anyway, so he comes out of his house at some point during the process. I will admit, it got a little smoky, and I was in the process of, tamping it down a little bit with the water to make sure, it wasn't just, trying to wipe out the entire neighborhood with smoke. And he comes out and screams at the top of his drunken ass lungs that you're killing us over here. And I'm like, sorry, taking care of it. And, in the process of, I told my son, I said, okay, we've got to, get the fire, a little bit smaller because it's getting a little too smoky. It was never dangerous by any stretch of anyone's imagination because we had all these leaves in a little pit. But I understand why the neighbors wouldn't want all the smoke. So got it. I didn't have a burn permit because I think that's stupid. So I just didn't bother at all. So we're in the process of getting this pile of leaves to where it wouldn't smoke as much. And I'm in the back of my yard. And here come two firefighters from rural Metro from around the front. Of course, never asked permission to get, traverse on my property, etc. They come waltzing around and pretty close to what you said. They're like, hey, man, how you doing? I'm like, great, how are you doing? Happy belated Thanksgiving. And they're like, hey, we had a call that, you're burning some leaves back here. And I said, yeah. And they said, do you have a burn permit? And I said, no, I just played stupid. Well, I probably wasn't playing. But anyway, so I said, no, why? And they're like, well, you have to have a burn permit to burn leaves. I'm sitting here thinking, whether it's in, you've got a fire pit or a grill or, where's the line? I don't know. And my lawyer, and I don't give a shit. But notwithstanding, they said, well, you need to put this out. It's getting too smoky. I'm like, well, as I'm sitting here with the hose already putting water on it, I said, yeah, no problem. I got it. I said, got a little too smoky. And they said, well, it's too dry. It's too windy, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, cool, fine. I had it under control, but, I acquiesced to what they said, and that's fine. And then they said, well, the Tennessee Department of Environmental, whatever, TDEC, can't remember the exact name of the acronym, but they said, they could fine you for doing this without a permit. And I said, well, okay, sorry, oops, follow my sword. They said, well, we're not going to worry about that, just go ahead and put it out and no big deal. I'm like, okay, cool. They seem nice enough. They left. 3 days later, I get a $1,500 bill. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because I'm like, okay, look, first of all, there was no emergency. You guys didn't do a damn thing. You guys came out and were like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going ahead and putting a little bit of water on this shit that I'm burning because it got a little too smoky. I never called you. The asshole who lives 2 houses down from me, who's just drunkenly screaming at me, called them. So I've never paid. I'm like, that's bullshit. I didn't call you. There's no contract between us. And this other person called. And by the way, you don't even have an argument of quantum merit, which would be, that's a stupid legal term, but it means there's no contract, but we did stuff that benefited you, so you have to pay for it. You didn't do a goddamn thing. You walked around to the back of my house, chit-chatted for 5 minutes, while I was already putting out the fire that really wasn't a problem to begin with. And then you want to charge me $1,500? I'm like, hell no, I'm not paying that. So I've never paid it. I've never called them. I've never done anything. They've sent me a few bills, and I've just ignored it. Because
I don't know if they can, but they threatened my credit score. And that's why I laughed at him, because I was in the middle of a bankruptcy. I was like, yeah, fuck my credit score up.
It's never showed up on my credit score.
They threatened that to me and stuff like that. Again, like, I will try to defend their position on some levels. Whatever your neat little legal term is, I know the premise of that. I don't know what the word. I didn't know the legal term prior, but if you own a business, if you own a McDonald's, and a company comes in and washes your windows and drops the bill on the table, and you didn't hire them, but they did the service.
And you didn't tell them to stop.
Right. And they're doing the job, and you're watching them do the job, and you're like, hey, those windows look great, guys. And they drop the bill, and you're like, we didn't hire you to do this. You know?
Yeah, then you've got to pay for it. You can't.
Is that how the window washers in like New York and shit? Is that how they can?
Fuck, I don't know.
But again, like,
very well may be, because you can't, you can't accept the benefit of a service and then say, well, shit, I'm not paying you for it because we never contracted. Your obligation, sort of like, this is a very simplistic example. If you're sitting at a stoplight and somebody comes up and starts washing your windows,
no, get off my car.
Yeah, fuck off, man.
All right, and if he keeps washing the windows, then you can't.
Yeah, fine, go ahead, whatever. But I've told you to fuck off. Right. So I'm not paying you, but you can't just accept. If someone comes and puts up a privacy fence in my backyard, and I'm like, oh man, that looks great. Right. It's like, well, fuck off. I'm not going to pay you $7,000. Well, no, that's not going to work. The correct way to respond would be, hey, I don't want a fence. Goodbye. You're trespassing.
Right. And again, like I get that part of the premise, but both of our examples is what they are contracted to do. They didn't. I don't know. I guess again to try to play a little bit of devil's advocate, not to defend rural metro because they could suck it, but
correct
to play a little bit of devil's advocate to it. Like I get it. They are obligated through their contract with the county to answer the call. Whether I called or not, they're obligated to answer that call, and there is a cost that is dropped on them for that call. That's their problem, though, in this situation. To me,
that's their issue with the county. Right. They've got the contract with the county.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like I get it. I understand. There's a gray area there because what we don't want is my neighbor 3 houses down, who is not the drunken asshole who's bothered by the smoke, but actually just looks up and sees a ton of smoke and freaks out. And it's like, oh shit, neighbor's house is on fire. Calls 911. It happens to be not true, but in the occasion that it happens to be true, I want them to show up.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's their deal with the county. And so I don't know what the correct solution to the problem is, but it is not inside our tax structure as county residents to have fire coverage. And I choose to not pay an additional fee for private fire coverage. Then we need to figure out a middle ground here. Because if I wanted to pay for fire coverage for the amount that rural metro wants, I could live in the city and get trash pickup and some other shit too.
True.
And the fire coverage that the city provides. Now, I know Mayor Jacobs has thrown the idea out. I don't know how far it's gone, but there has been a conversation about having a county fire department. I don't know if that's any more than just kind of throwing it out there in the air and seeing how people talk about it or whatever. And I don't know how I feel about it as a resident, regardless of, philosophical ideals and all that kind of stuff. But there is a problem with the way the system sits. I understand and I respect that rural metro has costs involved and they can't just throw their trucks out and not get paid for it. But if there's no system, if there's nothing in place where I can defend myself against them charging me, that's bullshit too. And so I don't know what the solution is, but we can't pretend like it's okay that they can just throw bills at people and threaten to sue and whatnot, whether they actually follow through with it, which apparently they don't.
Well, at least not in my example.
Well, I get letters. I get letters in the mail all the time because they know who's a member and who's not, and they send mailers out and like, your house isn't protected and blah 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 blah. It's only and they give me the whatever. I think it's like $350 a year for this house.
Yeah, fuck it. But here's the thing too: is beyond the whole issue of coverage, not coverage, blah blah blah. I mean, for God fucking sake. You send out a truck with 2 dudes who walk around in the backyard and like, hey man, what's up? You charge $1,500. I mean, that's absurd.
Well, actually, a better way to look at it too. You said 2 guys out to a fucking house fire, because that's what your assumption's supposed to be. What are you doing sending a truck with 2 dudes in it to a house fire? Mm-hmm. Are you expecting to do anything positive in that situation? If it is the worst case scenario, no. So obviously you're not trying to cover what you're supposed to be doing anyway.
No, it's a racket.
It is, and I don't like it, and it sucks. Yep. And I'm glad you didn't pay him either.
No, and I never will.
And I mean, again, that's where I'm at. It's like, it's fine. Like maybe as I get older and I want the ambulatory coverage, maybe.
You'll need it. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're going to need it at some point, and I will too, so.
Right, but
we're not there yet.
Because I mean, again, like when I bought the house, I called the not my real estate agent, my insurance guy, and I talked about it. I was like, we got a new homeowner packet, but just a bunch of shit because once the filings go in and all that stuff, everybody knows that you just bought this house. Yep. And so Rural Metro was one of those that sent the letter, and I was like, okay, it's something to look at, and I was reading through it, and I called my insurance agent. I was like, does this do anything for me? He's like, it's just an extra insurance. So what happens if my house burns down? He's like, we'll build you a new house. was like, does it make any difference if Rural Metro does anything or not? He's like, it's actually probably better off if they let it burn to the ground. I was like, oh, cool. So then I don't want them at all. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, but no thanks.
Right. I mean, and again, but again, and to throw it out there, just to be transparent about it or whatever, there is a question of how much am I and my insurance obligated if my house fire spreads to a neighbor's house?
Yeah, and then you're looking at, good old-fashioned negligence and, what caused your house fire, and did you do something that either A, caused it, or, B, caused it to spread to your neighbor's place. And if it's your damn fault, and or it's your damn fault that it spread to your neighbor's place, then yeah, you're going to be on the hook. I mean, if you've got insurance for it, great. But, that's old-fashioned negligence. That has nothing to do with rural metro or, any fire coverage whatsoever. That's just baseline.
Right, because if it happened in the city and I have city fire coverage, it's the same conversation.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think we've gotten a little bit far afield of the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying.
I never pretend like we stay on topic here anyway. But again, this is one of those, and again, the more I do the show and the more I talk to people, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know, and the more I realize I don't know how to know, and that's the problem. Like I don't I've tried to reach out to the sheriff's office. I have a contact. I have not gotten a response yet. I respect the fact that there are busy people out there and there's a lot of shit going on, and some random guy with a random podcast may not be on the highest return call list. But I'm trying, and I'm going to continue trying, especially with the sheriff's office. They're an elected body. They are obligated to respond to me, in my opinion, whether they agree with me or not. But in my opinion, I am a county resident. I elected this person into the. I actually don't think I did vote for him. I don't remember. It's been a minute. Anyway, I voted in the election that included his ticket. Whether I voted for him or not is unimportant.
You engaged.
Right. So, end of the day, he works for me and you and the county as a whole. And I believe there is some obligation for some clarification on this. But what really pisses me off about it is people with real credentials, real press credentials, aren't asking about it. I don't see News Sentinel stories. I don't see WBIR stories. Like, I'm going through the reason this got really crazy to me is that I had Richie Beeler on Monday afternoon last week, a week and a half ago, or Monday late morning, and so got the kids to school. Monday I'm off of the day job, and so that's why I do a lot of my interviews on Monday. So I get the kids to school. I come back. I turn on WBIR, watching the morning news, which is just those short little chunkets. I'm not watching the Today Show. I'm watching the actual local version, but it's still that 7-10 minute repeat cycle thing where it's
right.
Weather, traffic, a little bit of news story, random sports item, weather, traffic, different news story, sports item, random traffic, back to that first
repeat, yeah.
Right. And we got a county commission meeting tonight. Here's what's on it, and they go to some reporter, and it's like Board of Health vote number 2, blah 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 blah, and that's all they talk about. All 2.5 minutes of this segment is the Board of Health thing, which I get it. It's the biggest story going around right now in the county, and that's fine. But there's 50-something items on this agenda. It's a public agenda. I went and pulled it up after I got bored of watching the repeat news for the third or fourth time. I pull up the agenda, and I'm running down it, and a lot of it's mundane shit. It's land use stuff, which is a lot of what the commission does. Again, like I said earlier, as far as any gifts or grants or anything that is given to the county or any county body, the sheriff's office or the school system, has to be approved by a commission. So there's some stuff that different schools are getting, specific stuff. Like a PTO had raised money to build a new something at some elementary school. The commission has to approve that gift. And so a lot of the 50-something items is stuff like that. Kind of like, meh, doesn't really, not a big deal, whatever. But one of these items is drones. And so I'm like, that's something to talk about. That is something that is interesting and has more to it than just a yay or nay. And then I talk to the commissioner and I'm like, hey, what's this one about? And he's like, oh, well, then he explains the rule on why they're voting on it, not any depth behind what's going on with it. And nobody else is asking the questions. Like I was joking with Matt Shears, no, who was I talking to? Anyway, I was talking to somebody last night after the baseball meeting, it was Jesse from the Compass Knox, which is a really good publication. They're better at it than most, but he's not done anything on it either, for that matter. But I was talking to those guys, or I was talking to him about this baseball thing, and I was like, hey, do you have somebody with the sheriff? Do you know a good way to get in touch with the sheriff and whatever, professional courtesy, blah, 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 blah. He's like, let me see what I could do. And he's like, well, what are you looking for? And I was like, this drone thing is really interesting to me, and nobody's talking about it. And he's like, yeah, I heard about it a little bit or whatever. And I was like, yeah, where'd you hear about it? He's like, from your show. I was like, I appreciate that. I'm glad you're listening. That
awesome.
makes me happy. But I'm a terrible journalist. I shouldn't be a resource for people on important issues.
It's not nearly as widespread as it possibly should be.
I mean, yeah, and then I'm thinking to myself, how many other committee or commission meetings? And this is not even tackling city council stuff, which is a whole nother ball of wax. And then we're talking state stuff. Like I've got Massey and I've got Eddie Manis coming up, and I'm trying to keep on board with all these things. And it's like, this is on a 54-item agenda. There's really only one that was talked about, but realistically, there's like 4 things on there that were worth talking about. The drone and the Board of Health and a couple of other things are things worth talking about, but we're only talking about the one. And then what really freaks me out is at the same time is when Massey's dropping this change to how law enforcement can use drones. And it's like, well, I'm pretty sure Spangler knew about that. Just guessing. But when did Massey know about this? And I don't know. And I'm going to ask her about it. I'm dumb enough to ask the questions that maybe you shouldn't ask.
Go for it.
And I'm going to continue doing it. And I may need a criminal lawyer and have somebody handy for me.
I've got someone on speed dial for you.
Okay, because
Fear not.
Because I mean, really, this it feels stupid, but it doesn't. I'm not trying to push buttons with it. I'm just trying to understand. And what's scary about it is I fear that they don't want people to understand, and people trying to understand and explain to everyone else is a problem to them. And that's a bigger, broader governmental issue, not just specifically to the sheriff's office. But that is a thing that I fear. And that is a problem for us as a society that brings us back to the Fourth Amendment issue, and that we don't have a right to privacy anymore. You know, I respect that. You know, like one of the stupid arguments people always get. It's like, well, you sign your privacy away with all your Facebooks and Twitters and all that shit. That's fine. I did it. I chose that. Even though I didn't read the agreement or whatever, but I chose that. I know that at this point, everybody knows that everything you do on Facebook is collected data.
Correct.
Everybody knows that. I don't know. And, well, there's 2 parts. I shouldn't give a shit. The government shouldn't be one that I'm worried about taking data on me, period. But I don't know that if I'm in my backyard, whether or not I'm under surveillance right now at this point. I don't know that anymore. I've done no crime, so there should be no warrant for me. But I don't know whether or not I'm being watched in my own backyard with my 6-foot privacy fence, which should put another level to how hard it is to watch me in my backyard. But with a drone in the air, it's very possible that they can watch me do whatever I want, whatever I'm doing in my backyard.
Right, and that's a bigger problem, as you correctly pointed out a few minutes ago. You know, if you are on your private property, that's a whole different barrel of monkeys than it is if you are in a public space. I mean, you don't have the expectation of privacy in a public space that you do in your own backyard. And, you know, even now, that has been whittled away more and more because, okay, do you have an expectation of privacy in your home? Yes-ish. Do you have... ish. You know, you hear ish a lot, you know, when I say this. And do you have an expectation of privacy in your backyard? Yes-ish.
Right.
You know, and it's just... And the law is always slow. And this is one of the things I learned the first, 2 weeks of law school, so about $10,000 in. One of the things I learned is that the law is always super slow to catch up with technology. So by the time... Scalia issued that opinion, I don't recall the year, having to do with the infrared camera and, trying to pick up and ultimately did pick up the fact that this individual was growing marijuana inside their residence. The law was so far behind the technology.
Right. How many other people had it used against them and held up in court and or were in jail for or whatever prior to that, since the invention of the infrared systems that worked in that way, because law enforcement's going to jump on it because they should. I mean, it makes sense that they would.
Sure.
Maybe not should. That's poor wording. But how long is it? Right. How long has it existed, and how many people were in jail for it that didn't have the legal team that was willing to push it uphill?
Correct.
And get it up there, because that's the real scary part, is that they were probably somebody that were within the same months of each other before that happened, with this particular case that made it to the Supreme Court that just had a public defender that was above his purview to push it all the way up the hill or something of that nature.
Right, or a civil rights attorney. But the fact of the matter is, in handling as many civil rights cases as our office does, how often do we have the resources or, the commitment by the client or whatever the case may be to push something as far as potentially the Supreme Court? I mean, obviously, there's only a small fraction. I think it's about 10% of all of the petitions for certiorari to the Supreme Court that actually get granted, so the case is even heard.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, how many times does a client actually have the backing and the legal resources to even get to that point? So, yeah, to your point, is how many individuals have been subjected to what is now an unconstitutional search before there's someone who is able to get it to the highest court in the land, so to speak, in order to get a ruling that says, nope, can't do that.
Right, but again, it goes back to that same thing we were talking about earlier. The assumption of innocence has been out the window for years.
Correct.
And so, and it really got a kick in the nuts in 2001. Assumption of privacy went out the window in 2001 and stayed out the window, and it's not come back. And we've had multiple presidents of all persuasions continue to keep those things alive, which is another separate problem. And again, it's the passive mindset of I'm not doing anything wrong, so it's okay, is something that needs to stop. It just in general does not need to be the normal response to it. The normal response to it should be, it's none of your fucking business. It's none of their business.
No, it's
if
not.
I choose to share something with them, great. But to just assume that, well, since I'm a good person, I don't have to worry about it. No, you don't.
That's garbage.
You do need to worry about it because there are agendas at play that may or may not hit you personally, but there are people out there that live a life that isn't normal to you, that aren't doing anything wrong. They're not bad people, but allowing law enforcement and allowing the legal system to work in the way it does is just burying people for all sorts of reasons that don't make sense.
Well, I mean, obviously your political persuasion is libertarian, and I am liberal, leaning toward libertarian to a degree. But the fact of the matter is, your mindset and my mindset is, I don't want to be bothered by the government. If the government wants to, at least in my opinion, if the government wants to do something for me, then okay, I'll take a look at that. That's great, but I don't want the government to come in and say, hey, hold my beer, I got this. Whether I've done anything wrong or not, many of the things that I've espoused in various forums is probably not palatable to certain forces in the government, because as you know, I'm a civil rights attorney, and a lot of the positions I take run very contrary to those who are making policy and interpreting policy, etc. So, yeah, there are plenty of people in the government I have pissed off, whether it's Knox County or the city of Knoxville, the state of Tennessee, etc. I don't have any desire to have any person from any of those entities involved in my life, just because I may have pissed off their sensibilities at some point. So it doesn't matter what I have or haven't done from a legal perspective. There are many people who would look at what I do in my professional life and say, we don't like you because X, Y, Z.
I mean, I don't like you because you go after business, but that's a separate thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you hate me for the quality or lack thereof of my character, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I just say, like, it starts with, we're all supposed to be human beings, and we're all supposed to start on a level playing field. So at what point do we decide that it's okay to be monitored and subservient to? And that's the perpetuation, and that's what this drone thing says to me, is that they're just going to continue down the path of surveillance, and privacy is none of your business. We will take it on for you. We'll take care of that. It's for your own protection. You're not capable. We'll do it for you. I think there's 1,000 examples in 1,000 different subsections of the government, for that matter, where that is the mantra, for lack of a better word, that we are going to take care of it for you because you are incapable.
Agreed.
We're going to take care of your health insurance because you're incapable. We're going to take care of your kids because you're incapable. We're going to take care of everything else. So we're going to protect you from your boss. We're going to, we will do that for you because you're incapable. The Board of Health thing to me, that's what the Board of Health thing says to me. You're incapable of understanding the facts and understanding the information. Now, I will give a little bit of credence to, in the world we live in today, there's so many goddamn facts, air quote, that it can be hard to keep up. But when
you mean alternative facts?
When you've already built the hill as a government body, if you are a government body, you've already built this hill where we don't trust you, and that's part of the problem too. If that's the problem is like for the Board of Health example is we don't trust you to make the right decision, so we're going to drop these mandates on you. Well, you as the Board of Health are the ones that built the hill of mistrust. We don't trust you because of things you've done before. And maybe not you, the Board of Health, but you government bodies have done before. We look out and we see all these different government bodies doing shitty things all the time, and we stop trusting them. So the Board of Health is right. Do the mandate because we don't trust you. Because you're right, we're not going to believe the facts that you tell us because we don't trust you because you're another government entity and the government lies to us all the time. And that's the general problem to me. It's not that what it should be is a Board of Health should exist and should be intelligent and trustworthy, and we can say, hey, these are the health people, we got this thing going on. This is what they're saying we need to do. I think we should do it. Not you have to do it. But that lack of trust to start with is why, to me, they need to go to the next level and make it mandates instead of it just being like, hey, guys, this is what we need to do. And if we trusted them, we'd say, cool, we're on it. But we don't, because they are a government body of many that have over and over again broken trust bonds year after year, situation after situation.
Well, and to take that for just a minute back to the Fourth Amendment is, we the people back, many, many, many years ago in creating the Constitution crafted the Fourth Amendment to protect us from the government. And then through the years, we have acquiesced to the government, whether it be, through legislation, but more often than not, Supreme Court precedent. Those protections of the Fourth Amendment have been whittled away to the point where now having a warrant to, search, seize, etc., that almost is the exception, not the norm. Whether it's search incident to arrest, or whether it is a welfare check, or whatever the case may be. The Supreme Court in particular has whittled away those protections so significantly that now it's like, oh wow, you have a warrant? I mean, I thought you didn't care because the car could drive away, or I could flush the Coke down the fucking toilet or whatever. And that to me is absurd. The fact that we have gotten to the point where the protections of the Fourth Amendment are the exception. They are no longer the rule.
Right. I agree. Absolutely. 100%. So, what do we do about it?
Fuck, I don't know. I mean, I file lawsuits and I'm doing the best I can, but aside from that, shit, I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's AC, one of the guys on the main show, like when we get deep onto a topic like this, it's always he drives me nuts with it. He should have been a lawyer. He said he went into healthcare like an idiot.
Oops.
But then he goes like, we'll go. He would have done this, but in a much less affirmative manner than I'm trying to do it now. And it's like, okay, this is real. This is it's not a discussion of a reality or not, but this is happening. And I guess to me that's the important part is, so where do we go from here? And this is what I'm trying to do with this drone thing, and I'm scared to death of the sheriff's office for it, but I'm going to ask anyway. I think it's important that we
don't bring me up, please.
That
they don't like me.
Well, if they listen to me, which they don't, I can't stop that now. You're an official guest, so you don't get to use a pseudonym like some of my co-hosts do. But I don't want to. I mean, I think that's one of the things that is a issue, which goes in, and we can transition this into a First Amendment conversation with public shit going on right now. But I think that's one of the things that an issue is that there for some reason there's an unwillingness, especially locally, to me, to dig into issues, and to question it in the format of, well, okay, I get what you're after or whatever, but that is not the this is not the country we were supposed to be in. I think that's one of those things. I think that's one of those things on the grand political scale that I think is one of the weirdisms that's going on right now, and it's just one of the main reasons I really call myself a libertarian, because the two major parties are screwing the system up so sideways and hard that I'm done playing the game, and so I'm going to try to play the game breaker. But it's just I think if anything from this last election that I learned is that I think the populace is starting to catch up. There's starting to be a much more involved populace that understands a little bit more than just the red-blue conversation, as I think it has in the past. And so I think there is a want out there for what I'm trying to do, and not very great at doing yet, and I'm working on it and whatever. But I think there's a want out there for people to say, hold on a second, let's talk about this. Let's at least have the discussion. I just wanted to be, I'm not trying to say what we should or shouldn't be doing. I have my feelings on it, but let's at least have the facts in the air. And let's at least have the information in the air, and then you guys make your decision from there. All I'm after is putting the facts in the air. I'll throw my opinion on there, but I'm not going to say what we should or shouldn't do. That's my stance on it.
Well, I mean, you're correct, at least at the very baseline, in the sense that this past election cycle, there were more votes cast, at least in the presidential election, than have ever been cast, for any party. So there is, if there's ever anything I could ever give credit to Trump for, which I am very reticent to do, that is, the crazy son of a bitch at least caused people to give a shit about politics. Maybe some for all the wrong reasons, but at least he has spurned the populace to give a fuck about democracy. Well, I mean, so to speak.
Yeah,
that may be the wrong term, but to change gears for just a minute, to kind of put a fine point on something you were saying about, again, the Fourth Amendment, is let me just give you a few scenarios and cases I have right now, and why there are the problems there are and how we're trying to tackle them. One case that we have, for example, and if you want to delve into this, we can, or if not, we can gloss over it. But most of the jurisprudence, at least here in the Sixth Circuit, which is the federal district or federal circuit that covers Tennessee, I like to call it the I-75 circuit, Tennessee, Kentucky, Michigan, and Ohio, is that you do not have the right to a competent legal investigation. So if you're being investigated by law enforcement, it doesn't matter, at least in theory, and I'm trying to fight this, it doesn't matter how much of a fuck up or moron or how biased the law enforcement official is against you, unless it's just completely objectively incompetent, Barney Fife territory, you have no Fourth Amendment challenge if you end up getting indicted and then prosecuted for whatever crime you did not commit, if Barney Fife at least met the just very, very baseline. So that's one case I currently have up on appeal with the Sixth Circuit. Another case
Hold
on.
Let's stay on that for a second.
Sure.
I'm trying to process that.
Sure.
So I'm under investigation for something, and the detective assigned to my case, I don't know, is a dude I picked on in high school, and it's known by some level, and he doesn't. I don't know if cops recuse themselves from cases or not. Maybe they do, but
no, not to my knowledge.
So regardless of what I did or didn't do, in the process of the investigation, it is clear that he has a bias against me personally, regardless of the case in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no protection against that.
Almost none, at least according to the district court, which is a trial court here in Tennessee. In this case, I'll give you just sort of the very basic, fact pattern of this case. My client is a former sheriff deputy for one of the local counties, and he, stopped working for them. He didn't want to be a cop anymore. He wanted to do something else. So he moved on. Well, he was contacted at one point in time by a deputy from the same county, doing the same thing he used to do, who said, "Hey, man, I got a call from this landlord who said you used to live with her and you didn't pay all of your rent, so, your rent's due, motherfucker." To which he responded, "That's a civil matter." I mean, first of all, I dispute that, but that's a civil matter, so literally fuck off. And hung up on the guy. Okay? Follow? So, my guy's like, what the hell does that have to do with life as we know it? Well, so this guy already is pissed because, to use a reference to South Park, didn't respect my authority. So, a few months later, as unluck would have it, is this person, this homeowner, went to file a complaint against the same guy, saying that he did not do what he was supposed to in, constructing her house. So, this guy, according to his own testimony in depositions, the sheriff's deputy said, "Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. I remember that he was, rude and dismissive and basically a jerk to me." So I asked him, I said, "What did you do to investigate whether or not this allegation against him by this homeowner, which turned out to be theft, that he apparently bought cabinets using her money that were not meant for her house, and he later installed them in somebody else's house," which is complete horse shit. But anyway, in this particular circumstance, this detective was assigned to investigate this alleged theft, and he already had an axe to grind against my guy because my guy had been quote-unquote rude to him. So he performed the most cursory, incompetent, non-thorough investigation you can even comprehend, and then made the determination that my guy had committed the crime of theft. And in fact, had the detective engaged in a thorough, or at least a competent investigation, he would have realized that, first of all, the cabinets that were purchased were with the homeowner's consent, written consent through the bank. So she had a text message that said, "Yes, I approve, my client to purchase these cabinets." And that my client offered to deliver the cabinets to her home that was being constructed. And she said, "No, we're not ready. The drywall guys have not finished their job, so you hang on to them." And my guy said, "Okay, no problem." He put them in a storage unit, and then the homeowner, within a few weeks later, went and complained to the sheriff's department that my guy had stolen the cabinets and put them in someone else's house. So he never questioned my guy. He never, engaged in a thorough investigation to determine whether they were messages wherein the homeowner approved of the purchase and that my guy offered to deliver them, et cetera, et cetera. So the trial court, federal district court, granted summary judgment, meaning dismissed the case, and I won't go into all the gory details, but one of the main premises in which the district court based its decision was that you, under the Fourth Amendment, are not entitled to a competent investigation by a law enforcement official who's investigating you for potentially committing a crime. As long as that person is not so obviously, my word, not there, there's just a complete wackadoo who doesn't even look at any of the facts of the case and just says, "Okay, fine, whatever," the Barney Fife defense. I mean, unless that's the case, then you're screwed no matter how the case turns out. So, and my guy has not been convicted. The criminal case is still ongoing, and he's pled not guilty, etc. And that part of the case is ongoing, but the district court, the federal district court, said it doesn't matter. What matters is what did the arresting officer believe at the time, and was that clearly so far afield, again, my words, not the court's, was it so far afield that no reasonable officer could ever even consider that your guy committed the crime? So our case was dismissed, and I think it's a complete bullshit fucking ruling. So we appealed it to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we're arguing that no, if you have a clearly biased and utterly incompetent investigation, then no, that violates the Fourth Amendment, and you cannot be subjected to criminal prosecution if this investigation is so either biased, corrupt, incompetent, that no jury could ever believe, what you're saying.
Okay, so I'm trying to suss this out in my head, and so the criminal case is ongoing. An attempt to throw the case out because the detective lacked to do anything failed. But isn't that the point of the jury system? Is that you put this in front of a jury, and whoever is his criminal lawyer in the defense shows, look, here's all the evidence that says that this allegation is false. Here are the actual cabinets in question and all the other different parts and pieces, and find him not guilty. And then you have some sort of negligence lawsuit or something on the other side against the sheriff's office in this case for some sort of biased prosecution.
Well, I mean,
I guess to clarify my question is like, so the ends for your case is to dismiss the criminal case.
Well, the ends in my case is to hold the detective who engaged in the completely incompetent and or
specifically biased, right?
Right, liable under Section 1983, which is the vehicle whereby you can assert Fourth Amendment violations, which of course in this case would be unlawful seizure because the detective had such an incompetent and or biased investigation that my guy was damaged as a result of being arrested and now prosecuted because of that. So it doesn't matter what happens, at least as far as that's concerned. It doesn't matter what happens ultimately with the outcome of the criminal prosecution.
I get that
the whole
damage is already done.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The damage is already done by the fucking stupidity of all of it. Because to your point, yes, once he, at least what I assume is going to happen, I reasonably believe is going to happen, he gets acquitted, then you have a claim under Tennessee common law for malicious prosecution, but that doesn't have anything to do with the Fourth Amendment violation. I mean, that has already occurred.
Right. Okay. That may be above my pay grade. My brain is not calculating that one very well. I get the premise is that I don't know. I guess my assumption is that this goes to trial, and his trial lawyer gets him acquitted of the charges.
Lawyer, you mean.
Right. Yeah, the criminal part of it gets acquitted of the charges, and then the punitive damages to the officer acting in bad faith comes after the fact, because it was a clearly biased thing. But again, this is a little bit above my pay grade where this applies to the Fourth Amendment. At least I get it. I follow the premise of what you're getting at. I don't understand law enough to understand the progression of when the different things should be taking place.
I mean, really, the takeaway from it is it's just two different vehicles. Whether you got the Fourth Amendment 1983 violation, for unlawful seizure because the cop is a biased dumb fuck. That's one thing, and then on the other end is if you are acquitted, then you've got this Tennessee state remedy of I've been wrongfully prosecuted, which is not grounded in constitutional law. It's grounded in just state tort law. So it's just two different vehicles that more or less may accomplish the same thing. It's just in two different forums and two different procedural postures.
Okay, because again, I get what you're after. I guess my watching Law and Order and shit leans to the logic of the other one being.
Don't ever do that.
It's a fun show. don't ever
great.
use it. Don't ever use it as a reference for how law works. I get that part. But okay, so that's one. What you had another one you wanted to do that I interrupted you to go further into that?
Yeah,
one.
no, and another one of the cases I have right now is, again, going to the Fourth Amendment, is I have a client who, she was traveling down one of our local thoroughfares in her vehicle, and there was a bolo, be on the lookout, is what I understand that means, that was transmitted to local law enforcement, in this particular case, the Knoxville Police Department, about they were looking for a certain individual, female, this sort of age, this description, blah, blah, blah. And then they gave a description of both of her vehicle and then identified the license plate, alphanumeric. So one of our best and finest Knoxville police officers identified my client as the possible suspect. Now, note that the license plate number was not the same. He missed a number or a letter. I can't remember which one it is. But no reason to be nitpicky. So he activated his emergency lights, and she pulled into one of our local gas stations and just, roll up to one of the parking spots on the side near the air pump or whatever. And, Officer Barney Fife got out of his vehicle and approached her vehicle. Well, under normal, so to speak, Fourth Amendment jurisprudence, and the way that you should act in this case is, identify the individual, identify, whether that person is armed, whether they're dangerous, whether they're resisting, your directives, etc. But this guy decided to go ahead and forget all of that training, and he went up to the vehicle, and my lady was very upset. She's kind of a high-strung individual to begin with, which is not illegal, actually. Much to the consternation.
You seem nervous. You must have done something.
Yeah,
no,
correct.
yeah, I did. I got pulled over by a cop. I'm nervous. Yes.
Yeah, no,
you're correct.
And I've had 9 cups of coffee in the last 15 minutes. It's not cocaine. It's coffee. It's okay. But anyway, she's just kind of
fine too, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway,
well, agreed. But as far as the blue lights are concerned, she's just a naturally very uptight person, and so he rolls up to the vehicle and says, "Are you such and such?" Identifies the person who is the subject of the bolo, to be on the lookout, and she's like, "No." And then he starts arguing with her, and she's getting pretty agitated because, we're talking about it's 11 o'clock at night. That's not the best part of town. It's not that bad, but it's not great. So she's a little bit nervous, and she's obviously a mid-30s female, and this is, a mid-30s, police officer, and she's nervous, and he starts, basically demanding, saying that you are this person. She's like, I'm not this person. And rather than ask her for identification or, do anything to verify who the fuck she is, assumably because she's scared and agitated, he tells her, get out of the car. And she's like, no, I didn't do anything. I don't want to get out of my car. Again, to your point, whether you're innocent until proven guilty, or, did you do something? If you hadn't done anything, you should just get the fuck out of the car. So he starts screaming at her to get out of the car, and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. So she had rolled down her window to a certain point. So the officer reached in, unlocked the door, opened the driver's side door, grabbed her, unbuckled her seatbelt, and dragged her out of the vehicle, and basically slammed her for more or less, slammed her up against the side of the vehicle where she's sitting on the pavement, and is screaming at her, telling her that she committed the crime of methamphetamine distribution and theft and just all
whatever the bolo part.
Yeah, whatever the crap was, and she's crying and screaming and saying, no, I didn't. This is crap. My name is X, Y, and Z. And the cop keeps screaming at her, no, your name is not this, blah, 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 blah. And, after this whole incident is over, she ends up in the back of a patrol car in handcuffs. And then they finally are like, oops, wrong person. It's not the right license plate number. And when they never give her an opportunity to produce her identification, but once they went and started rifling through all of her stuff, including her purse, and got her ID, they realized, oh, gosh darn it, this is not the right person. Oops. And they finally let her go after, about a 45 to 50 minute harangue of being, just jerked out of her car, screamed at, put in handcuffs, put in the back of the patrol car. And the fact of the matter is, none of that should have ever happened because, one, when the officer approached the vehicle, she was not doing anything threatening. All he had to do was say, can you please produce some ID, ma'am? And if she had been like, fuck you, then that's a different circumstance. But she never declined to do anything. She told him she was not this person, and he never asked her, and it's all on dash cam. There's nothing disputable about it. He never asked her to produce identification, but she consistently protested, although in a very agitated fashion, I am not this person. I don't know who you're looking for, but that's not me. And he took the attitude of, screw you, yeah, you are, and you're either going to do what I tell you or else. And so, we've got a lot of procedural issues going on right now with the case. But, to make a short story long, is that, in our opinion, is an unlawful seizure because he never engaged in the very basics that he should have to ensure that he even had the right person. And she wasn't resisting, speaking with him or arrest or whatnot. And he just dragged her out of the car, cuffed her, and put her in the back of a patrol car. And then, 30, 45 minutes later, it was like, oops, wrong person.
Right. And so, see, this is what's gross about that to me. That's gross in and of itself. The whole story's gross. It's terrible. It's not the way things should be done. And I understand, for fairness sake, I understand there's a gray area. If it was the person in question, there's every reason for them to say, no, that's not me, when they ask if you're that person. I get that. But here's my real problem with this. You're going to win this case, and I get to pay for it.
Well, I hope so.
I'm just saying.
I've got some procedural issues, but ultimately no, because at least here in this community.
Let me correct that statement just to be fully, properly. I'm talking to a lawyer. I make sure I'm as clean and crisp with my statements as possible.
Okay.
I will not be paying for it because I am not a city resident, but the citizens of this city of Knoxville, city residents, will be paying for that with their tax money.
Not entirely, because whether it's the city defending one of their officers or the county defending one of their deputies, they are all required by local ordinance to carry insurance bond that is through, of course, the city or the county. So, yes, there is a premium to be paid for the insurance, and then, at least in theory, the premium goes up if you get whacked. But no, the taxpayers are not going to directly be, paying $100,000. That would come from the insurance.
Okay. I mean, I get it. I'm just saying.
I'm just being, you're trying to be technical, and that's fine. So I just want to make sure,
Long story short, we pay that premium as residents. We pay a premium. Of course. We pay a premium to an insurance company to insure our law enforcement against shit like this. Well, fine. Whether it never gets paid out or not, we're still paying that premium. Correct. Maybe we're not paying a new thing after you win this. We're already paying it now, I guess, is maybe a better way to put it. True. To be precise, because again, this is one of those, I don't know what the proper solution is, but it's an issue. It's an issue with governmental issues as a whole. It's like, well, when they fuck up and get sued, they don't pay for it. They individually don't pay for it. Their department doesn't pay for it. It's not like KPD can go bankrupt.
Well, I mean,
I guess they could, but
well, you know what that is. So, really, what should happen in the Ivory Tower world is, no matter who pays for it, whether it's insurance or the county or the city citizens, the fact of the matter is when there is a clear violation of civil rights, that particular law enforcement official should be terminated because of the misconduct. And to go back a step further is, and I don't know, because we're not always privy to it, and to the extent that we even are, it's kind of in the nebulous, but these law enforcement officials should be trained not to do this. They should be trained on proper Fourth Amendment procedure. And in the case of my lady we were just talking about, she didn't have a weapon. There's no testimony. There's nothing in the video evidence that even indicates that the officer feared for his life. So he should have said, "Can you please produce identification?" And
which he still should, in my opinion, should still be so. So, if it's not too much into the officials, then you're not allowed to say it or not. I understand. But you said something about meth. Like, what was the actual bolo for?
It was for methamphetamine and for I think it's for distribution of methamphetamine and some other more minor issue, but basically for being a drug dealer.
This is one of the things to me that I think is a conversation that needs had, is especially over this summer and all the craziness with the George Floyd incident and the Atlanta guy that we referenced earlier.
Right.
There needs to be a conversation about policy from law enforcement, and that it makes a difference who you're after.
Correct. I mean, that makes total sense.
And you got a drunk guy in Atlanta. Let him run around. Who cares? What's going to happen? Worst case scenario, he runs.
Whatever.
Worst case scenario, he runs out in traffic and gets hit by a car.
Victimless crime.
No, I mean,
what does that mean? Victimless crime.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, so we've got a suspected meth dealer, which is pretty gross. Whatever.
Yeah,
they're not paying taxes. Fuck them. Is that's the conversation I think we need to have on some of these law enforcement.
Agreed.
Is it worth?
No.
Is it worth a? I guess you take worst case scenario is your story. Is this crime worth harassing an innocent civilian over?
No.
Even if you're wrong and it is the person, if the bolo is accurate and this is the person and they lie to you and drive away, is it worth the potential of harassing above reasonableness an innocent individual for that crime that you're trying to stop? And in my opinion, specifically drug related, no, probably not.
No, I agree. No, it's not.
But I think that's a conversation we need to have. A lot of these things. I mean, again, the George Floyd one, a fucking fake 20 and a bad check.
Who cares?
Exactly. Okay, you had him arrested or whatever in a weird situation. Okay, whatever, that's fine. But I mean, like, okay, so yeah, you've got Ted Bundy running around. Okay, you could shoot him. All right, I get it. He's resisting arrest. You could shoot that guy. It makes sense because you have a known You have a known fucking serial killer, and you're chasing after him, and he's shooting at you. Shoot back. But you got anything else? Let him fucking run. Find him later. It's not like this is imperative of now. And again, it's this assumption of guilt problem that we started this whole thing on. It's the assumption of guilt. If you're gonna run, then you're guilty. If you don't want to deal with me, you're guilty. If you don't want to do the process that we say is the right process, you're guilty. And that in and of itself is the problem. And I think that a good way to step that down is to have a conversation about, look, this is how we interact with people. If it is whether we put some tier system in place on what crime's more important or not or whatever, but if this is like top level, like murderer that we're chasing after, okay, you could be a little bit more forthright in trying to make sure that this is or isn't the person. And if we do,
and what is your evidence?
Right.
What is your evidence?
And if we do piss off a citizen, that sucks, but we'll pay that consequence because the level of the crime we're chasing down is that important. But a fucking drug dealer is not that important because you know what? We've been chasing him for like 50 fucking years.
Yeah,
we still can't do shit about it.
Hey, the war on drugs, drugs won.
Seems like that's all the wars anymore. The other is the winner again. But that's the point, and I don't like and somehow that conversation is like a concession of defeat in but what's the point? Like the what's supposed to matter is the government and the law enforcement involvement and interaction with the citizenry. The assumption of innocence, that we are innocent first, until you mount said evidence that proves my guilt, not that I am guilty regardless. And I think, again, it goes back to the Board of Health thing, that the mistrust between the government bodies and the public as a whole is why things have to go the way they go. Yep. And I think that's another one. And somebody needs to be the adult in the room and go, hey, okay, you know what? We need to turn this down a little bit. We need to put forth the effort as the governing bodies and the law enforcement bodies to show the trust levels instead of continue to just step it up another notch into, I don't give a shit if you trust me or not. I'm going to do what I'm going to do because that's what my job is now.
Right.
And I think that's where we're falling apart as a nation.
I agree.
You know, and you know, it goes into little local stuff like your poor lady here, and it goes into the broad general stuff. I mean, the problem with I previewed that we were going to talk Trump at some point, so here we go.
Oh God!
You know, the problem.
I probably need another drink.
Sadly, it's limey White Claws or nothing right now.
Oh God!
There's an Ultra out there on the deck. It's cold enough outside; it should be chilly.
All right, well, I'll just sit here. So go ahead.
That's what I got. I'm sorry. I should have warned you on the quality of beer I had available.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
But I mean, I think that's the January 6th thing. It's like, you know, these people, as crazy as they may or may not be, there is an understandable, to me, there is an understandable lack of trust. It makes sense to me. The specifics don't make sense, but the idea that I don't trust what X, Y, or Z is telling me to be the truth makes sense to me. Now, I don't agree with the result or the actions or even the theory put about. But that theory only works with the lack of trust. If there was any trust in any sense between the two parties, between the federal and the state governments, between the state governments and the local governments, between any of those governments and the people, we don't have this situation. We don't have Trump in the fucking first place, for that matter. That's an aside. The world we live in now is one of my podcasters he likes to make the House of Cards reference constantly. This is a house of cards in all levels. And what is happening is cards are starting to get pulled off and things are falling apart faster and faster and faster because there's no trust there. On both sides, we're looked at by the government as morons and treated as such. And we're like, hey, we're not that stupid. But then we do stupid things like this January 6th thing to prove how stupid we are, and then it goes up another level. Like, I'm scared to death on some of the stuff that's going to come out of this January 6th thing. I'm scared to death that they're going to finish this impeachment. They're not going to, but it concerns me on a lot of levels on whether or not this impeachment goes through for the way politics works moving forward. I don't know. You tried to interrupt a couple times, but anyway, I ranted.
We could be at this for a while.
I'll kill you in about 2 hours. That's my timeline. You do what you want.
Well, you know, whatever. Okay, so first of all,
we may have to pause for a beer run, but
yeah, that's a definite. So I mean, first of all, if you're being mind fucked by someone who is a complete and utter fucking pathological liar who lied 30,000 times. During 4 years of being the dictator in chief, you know, if you're of such a weak mind that you actually believe all of that bullshit, then yeah, I get the fact that, you know, you are a zombie laden, you know, animosity laden mob.
But the problem but what my rant was though is that it's we're all being lied to all the time. At some point, there is a decision that people are making on which lie path they're going to go down. And this set of people picked that lie path. Because parts of that, because it's not 100% lie, it's like 97% lie. There's truths inside that. And like any good conspiracy theory, there is some truths, and maybe you're strung together 1,000 different little truths that have nothing to do with each other. But at some level, we're all being lied to all the fucking time. Oh. And so one set of people decides to jump on board with, we can't, I guess we're expecting everybody to just see through the lies all the time. All of the lies by all of the bodies at play. And at this point, if they're all lying to us, what are we supposed to think is going to happen? Regardless of which version of the lie we want to be associated with.
Well, as far as a lie is concerned, let's just cut the shit. And that is that the Republican big lie is nothing short of Nazi Germany, because they have sold a reality that does not exist, and they have preyed on the mental weakness and the economic hardships and just the general snowflake bitchery of people who don't want to take any personal responsibility. They just want someone else to tell them, boo hoo is you, your life sucks ass, here's how you can go about getting your own life back by oppressing others, and by the way, go ahead and destroy the government. You know, it is the sickest thing I have ever seen since, you know, what we learned about the Civil War. I mean, I wasn't there, obviously, but, you know, it is a depravity that is disgusting, despicable, and should be punished to the furthest extent that the law even allows. Trump should be impeached. Well, he's been impeached. He should be convicted and never allowed to hold office again. He is a cancer on this fucking country. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a psycho. Matt Gaetz, who is a bad-haired, fucking pathetic psycho. All these people should be flushed down the toilet of history because they are doing their damnedest to set our country on fire and burn it to the ground. They're disgusting.
Okay. So, where do I start on this? My issue with the impeachment, I get it, and maybe you actually know the legal standing of incitement to violence. I haven't rewatched the speech since like a couple days after it happened. But outside of normal total political rhetoric, I don't recall hearing anything abnormal. Maybe I missed something.
And that's how far we've descended. If you did not view that as not normal,
help me out. Help me remember. This has been a month and a half ago. I'm struggling. I mean, fight, march to the Capitol, march on whatever, make our voices heard, stand up to this whatever bullshit. Which phrase did Trump say about? Which actual law did Trump advocate breaking?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. For one, he violated his oath of office by inciting and specifically instructing a mob he had called to D.C. for the express purpose of, quote-unquote, overturning the election. He specifically directed that angry mob that had been whipped into a frenzy by both him, you know, Rudy Giuliani, who's a fucking piece of shit.
I agree with that.
And then his own stupid fucking son, Trump Jr., and, you know, he was being a complete pussy when he did it, you know, told him, go to the Capitol, overturn this, make this stop, blah, 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 I'll be with you. And, of course, he went and watched it on TV.
I thought that was Daddy Trump that said that, but yeah, anyway.
Well, that was Daddy Trump that said that part.
Sorry.
Yeah. So he said, I'll be with you. And, of course, he went, you know, and sat on his golden toilet bowl and watched it on, you know, YouTube or whatever. And then that mob he had assembled and incited along with his sycophants marched on the Capitol and then engaged in an egregious act of political violence against one of the three branches of government.
I agree.
And not only that, but
I agree in the egregious act part.
And not only were they specifically looking to kill members of Congress, I mean, you can hear, and the scaffold was up, hang Mike Pence. I mean, they were after an executive member, the second highest executive member of the government, along with any legislative member they viewed as someone who didn't support their loony, harebrained, fact-bereft bullshit.
Okay. So to back up a second, I'm fully on board with the persons who actually set foot in the Capitol without permission and all that kind of shit, and people with intent to do harm to government officials are a problem and stuff like that. But what I fail to see is, again, and not lawyer here, this is why you're important to me, is the statute or the whatever the legal term is for incitement of violence, in my understanding, has to be very specifically linked from word to action.
Again, I'm not a criminal attorney. I'm not a
So you don't know shit either. No, I'm just kidding.
Probably true. So I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a criminal defense attorney. I mean, I do, I understand some of this from the periphery, just from, being a, at least what I like to think, which is probably bullshit, as a legal scholar, what, air quotes, what the fuck that means. But the fact of the matter is that there are certain criminal statutes whereby individuals can be held accountable for what they've done. But let's not lose the forest for the trees, at least as far as the impeachment. I mean, who cares about, Trump Jr., Giuliani, and all those, just insane, despicable human beings. Let's talk only about the dear leader. And the fact of the matter is that an impeachment is not a legal proceeding. It is inherently a political proceeding.
I agree.
And one of the issues that's coming about is, the Trumppublicans are saying that you can't hold the president to account through conviction in the Senate for something after he has already left office.
Right, that's stupid. Right.
There is no constitutional precedent for that at all. In fact, quite to the contrary, there have been officials who have been convicted through the impeachment process after they have left office. I mean, the fact of the matter is, from January 20 till January 20, you are the president. And to those who say, and it's just such a disingenuous position is, let's kumbaya, blah, blah, blah.
He's out of office.
What the fuck? No,
right.
No.
I agree with you on that part. I do agree with you on that part.
Prevent him from ever holding office again.
I agree with you on the part that yes, his term is over, but that doesn't mean it gives him a pass on the proceedings therein. But what I have a problem with is if we're not allowed to use some of the phrasing in politics anymore, and again, agreed that it is not I don't have any glasses down here. I don't know. Here, hold on. Take a pause, people. I can work the pause button, maybe. All right, so that's the show first. I had about pee my pants, so we had a pause break there. I don't remember what I was saying at the end. I was probably right in the middle of something super awesome.
You obviously were when you were talking about how much you love Trump.
That's not what I said at all.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what it sounded like. Maybe I'm wrong.
But I think what I was getting at is that I agree Trump is a problem president. I agree that he's not been a great thing for this country. I agree with a whole bunch of that things. But I agree that an impeachment is not a criminal case. But I am concerned with what the long-term ramifications of an indictment on this impeachment would be for political speak in general. Because, again, in my recollection of it, yes, he stirred up the crowd. He got them excited. He got them anxious. And he set them off towards the Capitol in a frenzy. But nowhere in there did he use any rhetoric that I haven't heard 1,000 times by 1,000 different other politicians when they're talking about whatever their particular personal movement is. Fight, stand up. All those phrases are normal in my understanding. And again, I am fully open to the premise that I may have missed something. Somebody said something to me on the side where Giuliani had said something a little bit more specifically threatening. I don't know. I didn't watch the Giuliani part of it. And again, I don't know where that would stand in the legal parts of it. It's like, well, some other speaker is part of it. Does that make them liable for it? I guess the question for the lawyer in the room would be, if we were holding a rally and we were doing a thing and I had a big crowd and we were excited about something, this drone thing pisses me off. We don't need to have this fucking drone. We need to march down to the city county building. We need to make sure that they know we are not okay with this. We need to march down there. We're going to fight against this because this is not okay. And same sort of rhetoric, and I do that thing, and that crowd sets on its way. And then they proceed to break into the city county building and do similar things. Did I incite that violence with my speech?
I don't think so, no. No, I think that the difference here is you've got to look at the context, and you've got to look at the history of what occurred, even going back months before the election, because Trump had set up this premise, this lie, this pre-lie, so to speak, that the election was going to be stolen from him because he looked at the polls. He knew he was going to lose. And he set up this entire schematic so that once he did lose, that he could, at the very least, in his own way, save face. Because you have to understand, and let me just tell you, Seth, is I have read so many books about Trump. I've read not every single one that's out there, but I have read enough that I feel like I'm pretty decently informed as far as the way he ticks. And he is a sociopathic narcissist. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. It was never...
Obviously, because they went and did all these things, and then he was like, you guys shouldn't have done that. That's not what I meant.
Right.
And
Yeah, it was never America first. It was Trump first. Trump always. Nothing matters but Trump. The end. He doesn't give a fuck about you, me. He doesn't give a fuck about anyone.
I agree.
So let's look at the context. Is he... precipitated this big lie, and then when he did lose the election by a lot, he got fucking smashed. Then he decided to create the additional big lie that he had won, bigly or what the fuck ever. And then he sent his sycophants, Rudy Giuliani, who's pathetic and melts apparently, under sunlight. Sends them all over the country to try and challenge legally the results of the elections, whether it's in Georgia or Pennsylvania or Arizona or Michigan. And the judiciary, thank God, and this is one of the reasons why I still am a very firm believer in the rule of law, the judiciary branch, whether it was state or federal court, said, this is bullshit. You don't have any fucking evidence. Because the only way that you can prevail in, a legal battle is with evidence. And he had none.
Okay.
So, with that background and continuing to stoke the fires of this conspiracy theory that not only had he won, but he had won by a landslide, which is demonstrably false. And he has preyed on these poor people who, they have bad things in their life, whatever the case may be, or maybe they're mentally ill or both. He has preyed on these people and has then invited them to come to the capital, Washington, D.C. on 1/6, and then he whips them into a frenzy with his, again, lying rhetoric and says, march to the Capitol, fight like hell, I'll be right there with you, with the clear implication in meaning to stop Congress from certifying the results of the election. I mean, anyone who is in attendance, unless they're, just completely stupid, they knew what that meant. So he invited them there. He had already brainwashed them, essentially, had been brainwashed them for 5 years. Invited them there, whipped them into a frenzy, and then said, march on the first branch of government. And they did exactly that, and, they're screaming, let's kill Nancy Pelosi, let's hang Mike Pence. I mean, if there was ever a bipartisan moment in the history of our country, recently it was 1/6, because they not only wanted to execute Democrats, they wanted to execute a Republican as well.
Right. Right, and kudos for Pence, by the way, for stepping out and taking that fucking ire, because he knew it was coming, and he did.
Agreed,
and he did it right.
I don't like Mike Pence.
I'm not a fan either,
but
right.
I do respect the way he handled himself, particularly the last 2 months of
I agree with that.
His.
Again, I 100% follow what you're saying, but like it I could see other situations, whether it's around a lie or not. That's part of the part that to me is like, I get it. I get that the lie is important, but I don't know that it's truly important in how this changes things moving forward. I just it concerns me that the result of the finishing of this impeachment would turn into somewhat criminalizing what is normal political speech, because you have plenty of groups out there that have plenty of wackadoo things that they want the government to do, and they'll go march on buildings for all sorts of reasons. And when that promoter, for lack of a better word, that leader of the group is up giving their fiery speech to rally everybody up to go down there to do that march, and any words that Trump used become equatable to incitement, that concerns me in the long term of our ability as persons to interact with our government through the proper protest format, which this group did not do. But I don't feel like it is clear enough as of a line between the statement and the rhetoric and the build-up into the eventual action that happened that I feel comfortable saying it was clearly an incitement situation. Because again, I think of it to me as if I as a citizen, because in my opinion the law should apply to me the same as it does to him. If I as a citizen rally a group against this drone situation and I go give my fiery speech, and it's been going on for months and months and months, and there's been a bunch of different stuff, and there's a bunch of rhetoric, and there's a bunch of back and forth, and it's a heated debate, and it's a big deal, and I go and I give my fiery speech, and we march down there, and a certain subset of my group goes through the door. It concerns me that just because maybe mine's built on a lie, maybe mine is built on the lie that they're doing something with the drone they aren't actually doing, or something like that. It doesn't matter. That's my concern. Is it doesn't. I get that the context is important, but the standard is what the changing of the standard is what concerns me.
No, I understand that, and I am a huge proponent of the First Amendment. I have had many cases I've handled that deal with the First Amendment, and I still do. So I understand the concern you're espousing as far as ensuring that freedom of speech is protected, because that is paramount to our democracy. I agree with that. So with that basis said, you have to, again, going back to context and the speaker and everything that surrounds it, because what we had in this instance is we had the chief executive of the United States, who is an Article 2 public servant, who is espousing obviously easily debunked lies about our democracy and the way.
Okay, hold on, time out. Tell me more about Article 2, because I don't know these things as well as you do.
Okay, so in the Constitution, there are three branches of government. You have Congress, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. That is under Article 1. That branch of government was created. Article 2 is the executive branch, which is headed by the president. And then, of course, you have all your executive agencies, et cetera, underneath that.
Okay, so I guess what you bring up Article 2, and I'm thinking, did he breach did he breach something under Article 2's as far as impeachable offense, as far as maybe not impeachable offense, but did he go against something that's inside the Constitution in Article 2 about what he is and isn't allowed to do? Was the lie impeachable? I'm not saying he shouldn't be impeached. I'm just saying this particular part of it is what concerns me.
Well, impeachable offenses have never been defined per se under the law, because under the Constitution, it is high crimes and misdemeanors.
Right, because
whatever that means.
Right. Again, if it wasn't an incitement, if incitement wasn't the only article, I'd be a whole different level of on board. It's the incitement part that concerns me. Does that make sense? Like, I'm good with you. We can impeach him for 1,000 reasons, because I'm sure they're out there. A number of, continuing a number of illegal wars and other things that multiple presidents have done over time that we don't impeach them for because other presidents want to do it in the future. But anyway, those kind of things, yeah, I'm good with it. Let's do it. But again, it's the specific of the incitement that concerns me about it. I would love some situation to be very clearly in place where he can't run again, that he cannot continue inside the political sphere. I'm concerned that he doesn't want to anyway. He's going to play kingmaker and all that shit behind the scenes, and hopefully that falls apart quickly. I don't like that. It's a problem. But again, I'm not opposed to the impeachment and a conviction on the impeachment and anything that can be done in the legal sphere to keep him from being able to come back into politics in the future. But again, it's the concern of this First Amendment part, as you brought up. It's like that's what concerns me about this specific one.
Right. Well, again, we have three co-equal branches of government under Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. 1 is Congress. 2 is the President. 3 is the Supreme Court. So they are, and people get lost in this, mystifyingly, sometimes. That is, each one is a co-equal branch of government. The executive is not better than the judiciary, and Congress is not better than the president, etc. They are all equal. So what happened on 1-6 is that the Article 2 executive, let's take the people out of it. Let's just talk about, the very basic constitutional principles, is the Article 2 executive told supporters to march on the United States Capitol to overturn the duty of the Article 1 representatives of the government, and that is to stop them from doing their constitutional duty, which was to certify the Electoral College. So that is an attack by the Article 2
against
branch
Article 1
of the government against Article 1. And if there is not a high crime that encapsulates that, I don't know what does.
Again, and that I can get on board with, but it's not an incitement that's not an incitement charge. That's an interference with a constitutional process charge or something of that nature. You get what I'm saying? Like it's.
I don't know the specific verbiage. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the fact of the matter is, one branch of the government attacked another branch, and I don't know what words you use, but as far as the constitutional parlance, the fact of the matter is, one of the three branches of government tried to usurp one of the other three, and that cannot happen.
Okay,
ever.
See, now again, whatever the correct verbiage is, I can get behind that. But not through an incitement. That doesn't. That's where I get. Again, it's a First Amendment issue to me. It scares the shit out of me what that's going to do to political speech moving forward, and that's what I don't want out of this. I agree that whatever the correct verbiage is and what the correct assessment of what actually happened is as an impeachable offense is there, but not as an incitement charge, and that's what scares me about it.
Well, I am not a constitutional scholar by any means. One of the primary House managers, who, I'm sorry, the name has escaped me at the moment, maybe it's Rankin, from Maryland, he is, again, he's one of the House impeachment managers, meaning he's one of the prosecutors. He is a constitutional scholar and has taught for years in law school, etc. I don't know his resume, but anyway, he is preeminently qualified to espouse constitutional principles, and he is leading the charge against Trump on the issue of one branch of the government trying to usurp the other.
Okay, I mean, again, I'm down with. Like that, I get. And maybe it's my layman's version and not understanding it well enough. That's where I'm stuck, because again, I want the ability as a citizen or as a potential political figure in the future, if I decide to go that route, which I won't, but
I'll vote for you.
But pretending I might.
Probably.
I have too much fun doing this, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to go into actual politics while commenting on politics. That would be a moral issue to me. And I have a little bit of morals, just that one. Anyway.
Well, don't get crazy.
But, I would, maybe a better way to put it would be, I would hate to have Eric Wader. I don't know if you're familiar with Eric. He is kind of the figurehead of this NATS. It's Knoxville Against Taxpayer-Funded Stadiums. It's a Facebook group that's pushing back against the stadium project and all that kind of stuff.
No idea.
I would hate the premise that he doesn't have the ability to rally the public against this thing. And
fair.
There is public that's behind him on this, and it's a very fun issue to kind of play around with as far as what's going on. Are we going to build Randy Boyd a baseball stadium so we can make another $1 billion or whatever? I would hate the premise that he and the followers who agree with him that it's not something that we as taxpayers should pay for want to assemble and do something and do a public thing to show that we as Knoxvillians don't want this thing. I would hate that something that Trump did poorly is going to turn a tumble down effect to where actions like that become harder to do, or you have to be much more careful about it, where like, I need to have you, the lawyer, standing next to me while I'm giving my speech to make sure I don't use one of those words. And it's like, I'm going to say this, and I whisper in your ear, and you're like, oh, you can say that, and then I'm going to say this next. Do what?
What's wrong with that? I'm happy to help.
It's just, it puts on, it doesn't put on a good show.
No, probably not. But no, I understand what you mean, but I think that your concerns are overblown, if that's not too much of a,
Oh, my soul. Just
yeah, I know.
Cut me deep, bro.
I just ripped out the heart and still beating. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, public discourse and disagreement is a hallmark of our democratic society and the First Amendment. And there's nothing wrong with having a disagreement. It's the incitement to violence that's the problem. You are not going to, I assume, go out and say, hey, we need to rally against the stadium, and by the way, let's go hang Randy Boyd.
Right. But
that's the difference.
But the difference is that I might not say that as the leader, but if some overly zealous version of my followers does, is that my fault?
Depends on what you said. I mean, if you are just simply rallying and saying we need to fight back against this, we need to vote, we need to have our voices heard, we need to rally and do all those sorts of things, that's fine. But if you are saying things such as, we need to fight like hell, we need to go and, storm the Capitol, we need to do these sorts of things, that's totally different because you're advocating the overthrow of a branch of government.
I mean, storm the Capitol, okay. I'm down with that one being a problem phrase, but fight like hell is not a problem phrase. It's not an abnormal phrase.
Not in a vacuum. It's not. I mean, you have to look at it in the context of everything he has said. But no, I mean, if you just were, up there and saying we're gonna fight like hell against, this whatever it is, no, in and of itself that is not a problem. But if you have attempted to brainwash your followers into believing something that is demonstrably not true, and have also used calls to violence, and then you use that in conjunction, that's a problem. It's all in context.
Okay. I mean, I'll admit that if nothing else for this show's sake, I've tried to keep national politics at a minimum in my intake because it's too much for me to try to take in what's in front of me. Most of my national politics is the stuff I can't help but hearing, not as much as it is what I'm trying to dig into. So, again, that is what my fear is in that one. I don't know what else we got.
Whatever you want.
I don't know.
Any more Fourth Amendment?
You got another case you want to talk about?
Yeah, I've got one.
I mean, I don't. I mean, whatever. It's just. I think the main issue, the reality here, and I think as we discussed at length, is that there is too much just general acceptance that it's okay, that I'm not doing anything wrong. They can look at me all they want to. That we should be upset that our privacy is invaded at all costs, and we're not.
Well, let's take just a very brief look, if we will, at the immunities government officials have under the Fourth Amendment, and that is something that is incredibly infuriating to me as a litigator and civil rights advocate. So, without naming the guilty, I'll turn to one case I have in Upper East Tennessee, and we sued everyone. We sued the judge, the district attorneys, the sheriff, the jailer, etc. And predictably, there have been defenses of immunity. And, let's start at the top and work our way down. The judge has asserted judicial immunity, meaning that no matter what he does, Ida King, it doesn't matter. So, at least in theory, that's true. Because you as a judge can, for good, bad, and different reasons, if you screw up your job, okay, well, you may be voted out in 8 years, but you are not going to be found to have violated the Constitution. There are two exceptions to that. One, and it's probably is kind of common sense, is that the judge does something that is not a judicial function, then he or she can be found liable. So, for example, a few years ago here in Knoxville, we had a new judge who was elected, and that judge terminated the judicial assistant who was with the former judge. And that is a non-judicial function. That is a human resources employment law issue, from start to finish. And she sued, and she claimed that the reason the new judge, terminated her was because of her age. She was 60-something, and then I think he replaced her with someone who was in her 30s, whatever it was. It doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is that was a non-judicial function. So when it came to judicial immunity, there was no availability of that doctrine to protect the judge from his actions because it was non-judicial in practice. So that's one. And the one I'm dealing with right now, to give a little bit of background, is my client, and I'm not going to apologize. He's, maybe not the best citizen that you've ever run across, but the fact of the matter is he was on probation for certain crimes for which he was convicted, and his probation ended on X date. Well, what happened is that this judge, who will remain unnamed, that he revoked the probation of my client, even though his probation had expired 8 days earlier. So the other caveat, the other exemption from judicial immunity is if you act without any jurisdiction whatsoever.
Right, so probation ended, jurisdiction ended.
Correct. So that's the argument that we made, is probation was over, so when you revoked probation, then you had no jurisdiction to do that. Therefore, you are not immune from civil liability. So, that's, again, judicial immunity is the holy grail. You can pretty much do whatever you want with no way that you can be held accountable.
As long as it's inside the function of actual judge
Correct.
duties, not outside. Check.
Correct. So that's one issue that we're dealing with right now. We have gone after the prosecutors for basically improperly prosecuting my client, or failing to prosecute, when my client has been the victim of a crime. But again, the only way that you can remove that prosecutorial immunity and discretion is if the actions were not prosecutorial in nature, so if they're investigative. And again, it's a very, very narrow circumstance, because you're not entitled, I told you this before, that you are not entitled to a competent investigation. So there's a very narrow set of facts wherein, there is not only a not competent investigation, but there's just a non-investigation of something that should be the subject of investigation. So that one's kind of a weak argument. But again, I'm just trying to point out some of the defenses under the Fourth Amendment that government officials have, which are just very, very almost locked tight in many respects.
Right, because again, like one of my, the stated rule for me, elected or appointed or in government or not, is that if it applies to me, it applies to you.
Correct.
And if I can get sued for it, you should be able to get sued for it. Doesn't make sense to me why it's any other way. We're all citizens. We have different jobs. Just because you decided to go into job A and I decided to go into job B doesn't mean I have more responsibility to the public than you do. That seems logical to me.
Right, unless you work for the government, then that's not the case.
Right, which is really the only reason I'm considering going into politics, because I want immunity from things.
Oh, that'd be a really great idea.
Legitimately, it's good PR for other things that I do, and I can do things and not get in trouble.
Right. Well, and then we get back to what has been, very popularly discussed and maligned, etc., and that is qualified immunity, which I fucking hate qualified immunity. And for example, in that particular case, we have the sheriff and the the administrator of the jail. So the way qualified immunity works is that unless there is a clearly established precedent wherein it is an absolute no shit, no one has any question about the fact this is a violation of the Constitution, unless you violate that, then you have qualified immunity. So if there's any sort of question, what did you do as a jailer? Did you deny this person, kosher meal? Did you, deny them access to the law library for 2 days or whatever? If there's any sort of question of like, maybe, then that particular government official is immune from prosecution, or in our case, in civil liability. So unless it's just so obvious that whatever the government official did was a violation of the individual's constitutional rights, then they are not going to be held liable, which is a really, really tough bar.
Right. And right, because that was where, that was one of the big arguments in the Floyd case, which ended up not being any part of anything once it got rolling. But that was one of the concerns, and that's where the the qualified immunity conversation kind of got into mainstream for a little bit there. And again, it's like, it goes into tenure and some of the other different, kind of rules that play with government bodies as they work and stuff like that. It's like, again, back to my original statement. It's like, if I did it and it's wrong, then if you did it, it's wrong. And then a cop did it, it's wrong, or a judge did it wrong. It doesn't matter.
No.
And that's a problem. And then again, it goes back to that, I think it goes into some of the national news issues where it's, on the pandemic situation and stuff, like, we are setting forth these rules for you Americans because we need to survive this pandemic, but it doesn't apply to us. I'm going to go get my hair did, or I'm going to go have dinner with my friends. Yep. You can't go to a restaurant where I close them all. Yep. But, I can go see my family for Thanksgiving, even though I've been on TV telling you over and over again how it's a terrible idea to travel and go see your family and stuff like that. And it goes into, that goes into a lot of the different other stuff that we've been talking about. It's like there is a clear lack of trust between the two entities. And the problem is they're not supposed to be two entities. It's supposed to be we, the people of the people, all that kind of friendly, nice phrasing, whatever.
Well, James Madison warned us about factions.
Right. And again, it's as we and this is something that AC on the show talks about all the time. It's like this two-party thing is it's a smoke and mirror show. It's just it's the he doesn't say it this way. Other people that I shout out to Dave Smith and his podcast for any of the libertarians listening. Even though a lot of libertarians hate him. Anyway, there's the ruling class and the rest of us. That's really what's happening on the grand scheme. And there's different subsects of the ruling class. There's our local, Johnson City version or Knoxville version, but then there's our national version as well, that they get to do these things. They have things like qualified immunity in place, and they have all this different structure in place, not to mention, the good old boy systems and all the other fun stuff that we like to talk about a lot. And, other than you out there suing everybody under the sun, the concern to me is like, how do we move forward in fixing some of these things? Because I don't see it going away. I don't see any reason that the two-party system doesn't stay the way it is. I don't see any reason that, it comes right down to it. The criminal justice reform movement that was huge over the summer is fallen away. It's not conversation. It's not top of the list conversation anymore. The best thing that the only thing coming in criminal justice reform that I see, and again, I have a limited view because I don't have every hour of every day to spend on it, is that we've got another federal bill going through about maybe decriminalizing and pulling pot off of Schedule I. That's the only major criminal reform thing that I see going on right now. And all that's going to do is just let a lot of people out of jail that shouldn't have been there in the first place. But it doesn't solve any of these. It doesn't, to me, the issue of the ruling class or the government entity versus the public. And the reason that I just accidentally phrased it that way, I finished that sentence and I was like, what did I just say? That was right. It was them versus us thing that's going on. And, depending on how deep into tinfoil hat land you want to go, on how intentional it is that they are putting us against us so that we aren't against them. And I think that's the reality of I you know, it's not that tinfoil hat to me. I think there's a realness to it. How intentional it is or how natural it is from the way the system works, I'm not sure. But there is clearly, it is easier for everybody involved if we are fighting to each other about what gender people are and what colors matter more than others and all that kind of bullshit. That as long as we're arguing about that, the ruling class gets to keep doing what they're doing. And
it's red herring, man.
Yeah,
red herring.
This GameStop thing. If that wasn't the most clear and evident, you don't get to do what we do game that I've ever seen in the history of government involvement in things.
True enough.
And I mean, what mainstream media coverage has been on it is that the Reddit group is the bad guys, and it's like what? They're doing everything that everybody has done for decades in this system. They just did it against the ones that had all the money in the first place.
Good for them,
right? And I think Robinhood, the however they did whatever they did and whatever made the excuse that they stopped it the way they did needs to be hung by their toes and left there. I think it's not. That's finally the market pushed back, and somehow. We're vilifying the hero here. It's Robinhood is the bad guy in this. Robinhood, the app, is the bad guy, but the actual Robin Hoods in action, the people that were actually said, you know what, we're going to go take a chunk out of the hedge funds. These guys that push the market around and keep us where we're at and take all the money and do all this, that, and the other, we're going to push back on that. Here's the plan. Go. And we did it. I say we, I wasn't part of it, but they did it and they succeeded in it, and somehow they're the bad guys.
True enough.
And that's just insanity to me. So I'm out of steam. I'm gonna pass out if we keep doing this. Plus we're out of beer. So you haven't made it to the longest episode, but you're up there.
All right.
You want to plug the law firm or anything?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my law firm is the Law Office of James W. Freehoff, PLLC, and we engage in civil rights plaintiffs work, whether it's employment law or, trying to protect constitutional rights. But, if you have been wronged by your employer or the government, give us a call. It is 865-236-0347 or www.freeofflaw.com, FRIAUFLAW.com.
So if you want to, anyway, I'll make the joke anyway. If you want to sue me indirectly because the government did something wrong to you, this is the man to call. See what I did there? We're almost in agreement. almostagreement@gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Lawyer Jamie in the house. Drank all my booze. Confused me on all sorts of lawyer things. But again, the point being is that there's a true difference in what's going on here and who's allowed to do what and who's not. And fuck you, it's none of your business is an appropriate answer. And it is a legitimate answer, and it should be the default answer. And then the exceptions get to come in. Start with mind your own business. Finish with, okay, you have a valid excuse to invade my privacy, and go from there. Again, almostagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Hit us up. Keep it rolling. Like I said, I've got Massey coming up. I've got Manis coming up. I've got Lundy coming up for sure. I'm trying to work at the sheriff's office to get somebody from the sheriff's office to come tell me some more about the drone situation. Baseball stadium will be a topic, among other things. Talk to a couple of city council people. I'm trying to work on some dates for that as well. And then, just normal people talk at some point. Good night, everybody.